Canadians' finances and our pocketbooks are clearly under attack, and the collusion between large corporations and our government is being done to such an egregious level that even the mainstream media is starting to call out some of their tactics in a way that I didn't think we would see. We are seeing the pendulum shift, and we know that the media is starting to get scared of the people because we are the ones who ultimately are paying their salaries by being the consumer, and of course being the taxpayer whose government subsidizes the media. They see the writing on the wall, and I found today's stuff potentially signs for what we could see with the media maybe being more honest. Then we have a video with Trudeau acting unhinged based around his investments. Of course, we will get into the details of that, so let's get into it.
Cutting back on daily lattes, big purchases, or lavish nights out. Economist Carrie Freestone says we're in the midst of a so-called me-cession.
Households are saying they feel stressed. So it's a question that we get asked a lot is why does it feel like we're in a recession when we're not actually?
As a country,
When we're not actually. Yeah, okay.
Canada has avoided a technical recession. That's 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, largely thanks to an influx of newcomers. Since mid-2022, immigration has added 2 million new consumers to the Canadian economy, distorting the financial picture.
It's made things seem rosier than they actually are, according to economist Charles St. Arnaud, until you break it down to spending per person.
When we look.
Okay, before we get into the spending per person, which as we know, Canada is actually in a recession, the government, including Freeland and Trudeau, who keep telling us how strong our economy is at the macro, are just lying. It's a full lie. But then what I found interesting was they actually brought in the point of, hey, immigrants spending and them coming over as consumers. They used to not, oh, the immigrants aren't the ones increasing the spending. They used to say that for years, and now they're finally, yes, because they are consumers as well. They're also buying. That's keeping things afloat. That makes things way worse because it's kept inflation higher, which means rates had to stay higher for longer because of the fake pumped up recession. And this needs to be talked about because people, I've said it in 1,000 videos and I'm going to say it in 1,000 more, don't understand how big of an impact that has to our finances when inflation continues to seem worse, because it means rates had to go up and all of these other things which could have been avoided. At the very least, we could be rebuilding our foundations without the immigrants, because that is not a sustainable way to build economy or our GDP. And we will get into some of the other stuff he talks about here.
Look at consumer spending per capita, we're actually spending about 2.5% to 3% less than we were pre-pandemic, and almost 5% lower than where we should be.
Many residential
3% less than pre-pandemic. That would be 2019 numbers. That means our economy, in theory, should have grown for 5 years, but it didn't. Obviously, the spending contracted, which means we're doing less spending than 2019. The way our money system works, that's not what you want to see.
mortgages recently renewed or are set to renew in coming months at much higher rates. And household debt levels are already elevated.
And if we look at real per capita GDP growth, I can tell you that 6 of the last 7 quarters, it's been negative. So definitely feels recessionary.
A recipe for what's known as a kitchen table recession, where household budgets are tightened. Less groceries, more discount purchases. As all those new consumers keep many companies from laying off staff in droves for now.
A lot of what we're seeing is companies basically imposing hiring freezes. So companies saying maybe we're not outright laying off employees, but we're certainly not hiring right now.
Many economists expect the Bank of Canada to take its benchmark interest rate down to 4% or just below by year's end.
Think about how broken that is, that the companies are only not laying off because the immigrants are coming over and they're increasing spending, but the companies aren't hiring. So if companies aren't hiring, and they're not laying off because of the immigrant spending, it's like, this is a super broken system. Like, do you guys not understand how bad that is in the government? Like, that's the worst way you'd want to build your economy ever. Like, and you just have so many extra bodies for not enough jobs. And then they talked about it being a grocery table recession, which is how we get into this next video, which they start talking about stretchflation, which is the reverse of shrinkflation, except it still hurts us as the consumer. But we have a couple ways on which we can avoid this.
You've heard about shrinkflation and likely skimpflation, but what about stretchflation? It's a new term showcasing how you're spending more but getting less at the grocery store. Shoppers are buying larger size products, so they might think they're getting a better bang for their buck, but actually they're paying a disproportionately higher price for the bigger size. Here to explain is Sylvain Charlebois, Senior Director, Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. Good morning. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
Explain how stretchflation works. Are consumers being tricked here?
Well, actually, you just explained it very well, Marcia. To be honest, it's basically increasing quantities, but also the price will also increase disproportionately, essentially. So if
Yeah, so, and we're seeing that not just at grocery stores. Like, have you guys noticed at fast food restaurants? Comment down below how many more of them have combo deals or other sort of like value meals, they're calling it, where you get more in theory. So you're thinking you're getting a better situation, but you're still spending more. It's like, oh, you get more items, but you're paying more money. It's like their tricky way to try and get us to spend more now.
let's say, for example, you increase quantities by 25%, you may actually see the price increase by 30%. I think this is the industry's response to the criticism that it received around shrinkflation. We've seen shrinkflation for many decades, but the recent round from, say, 2022 to...
Have you liked the video yet? If you haven't, it's a free way to support the channel and get these videos in front of more people. It really helps us grow. And if you like what we talk about here, hit subscribe. I'd love to have you on board and help build the community. Back to the video.
Say now, 2024, a lot of people did notice that quantities were dropping, and they got upset. A lot of people got upset. This is the one thing that makes people upset at the grocery store more than anything else: shrinkflation. They are getting less for their money. Now, in response to that, I think the industry is just trying to offer more, but they're also...
So with the shrinkflation in particular, did you guys not notice that cheese blocks, like blocks of cheese, I swear they were 500 grams. Now they're 400 grams. So every time I go now, I'm like, this feels so much lighter. And then you look at the price, it's 30, 40% more and it's way lighter. It's like, so we're getting shrinkflation and it's more expensive. Come on.
So charging more. We've seen cases in Europe. Now we're starting to see cases here in North America.
So are there certain products that are more prone to stretchflation than others?
Anything packaged, center of the store, but in Canada, I don't want to name drop, but
I hate when they do that. Then name drop. If you know a specific company that's doing it, then name drop.
we are seeing cases in the dairy section right now, and of course, center of the store, dry goods. I would advise people to just look at the price per 100 milliliters or per 100 grams. By law, retailers have to actually provide you with that data at the point of purchase. So it doesn't matter what happens to your product. They still have to show the price per 100 milliliters or 100 grams.
Yeah, which if you guys don't know where to find that, it's actually specifically on the price label. And it's usually in like either the little right corner. You'll see per 100 grams, per 100 milliliters. I check that all the time. Because that will show you specifically what you're actually getting, because you could think like, oh, this bag's way bigger. But when you look, oh, it's per 100 grams, that's $1.69 and that one's $2.10 and it's a 500 gram bag or whatever. It's like, okay, well, if this is on every product and it's every time you go, this money adds up, especially since we're getting death by 1,000 cuts with everything right now.
What factors are causing stretchflation?
Well, essentially, it's, well, at the very beginning with shrinkflation, it's really all about commodity prices, input costs, labor costs, the cost to do anything. Stretchflation, in my view, is really shrinkflation 2.0. So in response to the criticism related to shrinkflation, the industry is trying to offer more, but likely you'll be charged more per 100 grams as well.
Anything
Yeah, the corporations are always going to try and trick us. They're not going to lose money on giving us a better product, especially these days, because it all comes down to shareholder value. And we can see, and listen, I'm a capitalism guy, so these companies are going to keep trying it, but then you just support who you want to support. That's why I wish these people would name names. Like, I don't know direct companies that are doing this. Like, if he's aware, he's the food professor or whatever. So name the names so we know what's going on.
That consumers or the government can do about this problem, Sylvange?
Well, actually, be on the lookout. Look for larger quantities. But if you are getting more, look at the price and look at the ratio related to the quantity you're getting.
It is happening right now. Be mindful with all of your purchases, obviously. But the reason that this is getting so bad, like we know, is because of government and corporate collusion together. In which case, we have this video of Trudeau, who just randomly kind of panics from this question from the reporter and tries to take a shot at Pierre when we know that all of these problems that are happening can be tied back to almost everything that he says in here. Let's get into it.
Last week, steel and aluminum CEOs and opposition leader Pierre Poilievre called for the federal government to match the US's tariffs on China. Why has Canada not moved on this yet?
Well, first of all, it's a bit of a joke that Poilievre is...
Also, the question was, hey, the Pierre said we should match tariffs on China, which I actually don't even agree with. So why has Canada not moved on the tariffs is what Trudeau was asked. And let's see what his answer is.
Suddenly talking about workers in the auto industry. He has said repeatedly that he wouldn't be making these investments in our auto industry. He wouldn't have invested. He'd be cutting our investments in EVs, in building an extraordinary EV supply chain in Canada, something that we've been doing as a government in partnership with the government of Ontario and others right across the country over the past 4 years in a deliberate strategy. Bring in Volkswagen, bring in Stellantis, invest in Honda, invest in the EV supply chain from mines to manufacturing and recycling. We have been there every step.
Invest, invest, invest. He always uses that word. And like I said previously, we should make a drinking game out of it because it's crazy to me that he can call these investments. When you invest, it means you expect a return on investment. It doesn't mean you spend to create something else. There needs to be some level of return if it's an investment. If it's not a return, then it's just a purchase, which is what the government is basically doing. They're constantly creating purchases through debt and our taxpayer dollars. Why this is big is because they don't actually look into the fundamentals of these deals. We see these, $13 billion on a battery plant and $5 billion on this plant. And then you go, well, the $5 billion for 1,000 jobs, well, that's $5 million per job. And then you start to break it down, you go, we're never going to pay off this, it could take 50 years for us to pay this off, if they're this investment, and these companies are bringing in foreign workers to do a lot of the work. So we see companies bringing in foreign workers to do the work with government money that's never, ever going to be paid back because corporate taxes are protected. So then they're really only taking it from income tax, which is money that's been paid into the business. So it's like none of these are investments. It's all government purchases. I wish he would change the language.
Step of the way, the federal Conservatives continue to say they'd cut it all. They don't support it. They don't believe in investing in Canadian workers. So him to suddenly turn around and say, we're worried about EVs, that's baloney. He's looking for a political angle because that's all
baloney.
He does. But in regards to the CEOs and steel manufacturers and partners in the industry, I can tell you, for the past many months, we, alongside Minister Mary Ng, our Minister of Trade, have been working with stakeholders, working with community groups, working with international partners on making sure that Canada's EV advantage remains. Canadians have invested in this future, and we're going to make sure that we follow through on it.
Canadians have invested in this future. We're going to make sure that we follow through on it, aka I'm not going to address the tariff situation. That being said, I'm not even against the tariffs. My point is Trudeau never answers a question ever directly. They ask one question, what's your answer? He goes, well, Pierre's full of baloney. It has nothing to do with it. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you made it this far in the video, you absolutely freaking rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.